Helpful for life.
Rice. It's a lovely staple that is cheap but amazing in a wide variety of cuisines. First, some fun facts for you. Rice is the third most produced agricultural commodity in the world, behind sugar and corn. It is also responsible for 1/5 of all calories consumed in the world. Pretty crazy, huh? Rice is a cereal grain, which means that it is a grass that is grown specifically for the edible parts of the grain. Speaking of grains, let's talk whole grains for a second. In case you aren't aware, whole grains are generally considered to be very healthy. They are a great source of carbohydrates, dietary fiber, and nutrients. Also, they're linked to lowering the risk of certain diseases, heart disease and diabetes, for example. So, what is a whole grain? A whole grain is a cereal or pseudo-cereal that has the bran, germ, and endosperm. Now, you don't need to know what all them big fancy words mean, but take a look at the diagram on your screen. It shows a wheat kernel, so you can see the whole grain in all three of the different parts, the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. However, during processing, a lot of times some of those parts are removed. This is what is called a refined grain. One example of a refined grain is white rice. As you can see, brown rice is the whole grain, whereas white rice is the refined grain. It has had the bran and the germ removed, leaving just some bran residue and the endosperm behind. This processing leads to the white rice having much less antioxidants, vitamins and minerals, as well as fiber. However, one step done during processing to combat this is something called enriching. And what that is the addition of vitamins and minerals back to the grain in order to enrich it. This is done a handful of ways, but basically what they do is they add it to the outside of the grain. Because of that, you may lose some of those nutrients from rinsing and cooking. Okay, now you're a pro on whole grains, refined grains, and enriched grains. By the way, when you're shopping for flours or baked goods, you'll see these same descriptive words, and that's because flour is often just a ground up grain. Enough about that though, let's get back to the rice. There are a lot of varieties of rice: Bamba, Basmati, and forbidden rice, just to name a few fun ones. Fine Cooking Magazine has a cool webpage that highlights a lot of the main types. Check it out if you're interested. I'll give you some general notes though. Rice is typically classified as long, short, or medium-grained rice. Yes, I'm sorry guys, but this is one of the times where size really does matter. Long grain rice has a dry, fluffy, and firm texture. Also, after cooking, the grains typically stay separate. Long grain white rice is one of, if not the most popular rice in America. Brown, Basmati, and Jasmine are some other types of long grain rice. Medium grain rices are more moist, tender, and slightly chewy. Paella and risotto are typically made with medium grain rice. Short grain rice is soft and tender. It's also most likely to stick together. Sushi rice and rice pudding are often made with short grain rice. One last thing that we wanted to mention is arsenic, because who doesn't want to talk about arsenic? You may have heard that rice can sometimes be high in arsenic, which can cause cancer. However, this isn't necessarily an issue unless you're eating lots of rice. And even then, it's not exactly clear how big of a problem this truly is. If you eat a lot of rice and this concerns you, here are some tips from the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, to help reduce the amount of arsenic in rice. First, rinse your rice completely until the water runs clear. Then, cook it more like pasta. Use a 6-to-1 ratio of water to rice. After it's done cooking, simply drain the rice. These two steps can reduce the amount of arsenic by 50 to 60%. As a reminder though, all of that extra water may rinse away some of the nutrients on the outside of enriched rice. Pros and cons. You're killing yourself less, you're making yourself less healthy, whatever. There are some other things you can do, like paying attention to where your rice comes from, choosing different varieties. But again, unless you're eating lots and lots of rice and you're concerned about it, don't worry your little head.